This is this week's theme song. Good day, folks. My name is John, and I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast, broadcast, YouTube video. This is Hovering Over the Deep. And I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, to tune in, to take a moment out of your day, your thoughts and considerations to just hear what I have to say. Parables, ramblings of a madman, perhaps. You know, I'll kind of turn this down a little bit. You know, it's interesting to me. You know, most people who graduate from college with a philosophy degree are not philosophers. Oh, sure, they can quote and regurgitate so-and-so and such, but they don't really have the essence and spirit of a philosopher. What they actually are just doing is just, like I said, regurgitating that which they've already learned, that which they have already gleaned. They're not actually philosophizing. A philosopher, by definition, is one who loves knowledge. And that's something very, very important, because it seems to me that there's a lot of people who like to regurgitate, but they're not really assimilating and synthesizing information and data. So we can take this and we can extrapolate a whole bunch of stuff about what's going on in the world today. One of which is we live in a world and a culture and a society where everyone is educated. Everyone is educated. You graduate from school and high school, and then you go off to college, and then you get a 4-year degree somewhere in between the drinking and sleeping around. And then you move on with your life, and then maybe at that somewhere in between, you got yourself married, had some kids, and now all of a sudden you have yourself a job, and you find yourself in the world. And you're educated, you know things. You have a piece of paper that validates that you are smart. Isn't that great? And so what happens is that because you were filled with all of that warm professor love, as I have heard it so eloquently referred to, you now suddenly are left with an idea that you know how to reason because you got an A on the paper. You have an undergrad, a bachelor's. You have a master's degree. You have a PhD. And you have all of these things that say that you are smart. And if only that were the case. If that were the case, we would have people who have the ability to logically reason and assess and take the time to read and assimilate, to determine the validity of statements, to pick apart an argument. But instead, we don't do that anymore. No, what we have today in our Western society, in our culture, is a bunch of people running around trying to sound like they're intelligent by shitposting you with articles left and right. I can juxtapose my ideology with this article and this authority, appeal to authority, that juxtaposes my already preconceived notion. This is nothing more than validation. And that in and of itself is a problem. I actually came across this not too long ago when I was posting an article in a conversation with somebody, and they said to me, well, I'm not going to read that. I don't have the mental energy. And I asked them, I said, so why then are you sharing with me articles? If you are expecting me to read what you share with me, and I generally tend to do so in kind, it doesn't take you long to read some of these articles. They're pretty short and sweet, and they're not exactly terribly complex. But if you're taking the time to share with me something, and I am expected in kind to read what you have to say and comment on it, why are you not willing to take the time to read and comment on what I have shared with you? Well, I just read the comments. Oh, well, you just read the comments. Oh, okay. So you read the commentary on the article that I read, which, let's be honest, most of the articles that we see today in the news aren't really actually articles. They're mostly just commentary. They're not actually reporting the news. They're more commentating with their biases to sell more advertising on the news, whether it be Fox News or CNN News or MSNBC News or NPR News, or pick whichever flavor of the month news that you want, that you go to, that has the most aesthetically pleasing medium that you'd like. we're not actually reading news. And for the most part, most of the content of the articles that we're reading is just commentary based on somebody's opinion, thought, and ideology. And of course, now we could sit down and go to this concept, this video that's been floating around called Plandemic, which I did watch. I thought it was very fascinating. And with everything, with every bit of, with every talking head and face on a screen, I always take it with a lump of salt and a bowl full of sugar anymore. And I listened to what this person said, and this is where we're getting to the crux of what I'd like to talk about today, which is how we assimilate and what we do with information. You see, a lot of people, the first thing that they did was they commented on the credibility of this woman, and that was very fascinating to me. They zeroed in on this woman. Now, I don't know anything about this woman's personal past and history, and I read some of the detractors of her video, of her interview, and really, for the most part, everything that was stated about her was nothing more than defamation of character. It was an ad hominem attack. It wasn't actually talking about the crux of what she was saying, whether what she was saying was true or valid or whatnot, just that everything she was saying was garbage because she had gotten arrested. And then, well, that's fine. You know, Bill Gates has gotten arrested, too. And you look at all the people that have gotten arrested at one point or another. Okay, so you got arrested. That means you did something that was civilly disobedient, and so your punitive action is going against you. That does not, make or break your credibility. Jesus was arrested, so I don't know what to say about that one. I guess that means he's not a credible person because he was arrested in some capacity. So anyways, people are making these arguments and these contentions towards these people not based on what they're saying, but on the content of their character. And while I would say that there are some considerations to be had in the content of one's character, we must be careful not to say that nothing good can come out of Nazareth. We can't say anything good comes out of the poor and downtrodden areas. We can't say that anything can come from a person's skin color, race, creed, color, or religion. I'm not willing to do that, and we must be careful not to do that. It would be terrible for me to say that nothing good came out of Islam. It would be terrible for me to say that, the Jews are behind all of this. It would be terrible for me to see that the Christians are nothing but, warmongering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It would be terrible for me to say this. I have to be able to look at the content of what they are saying and judge the tree by the fruit in which it bears. Judge the tree by the fruit in which it bears. And yes, there are a lot of people who are guilty of one thing or another, and if we went through every person's closet and found all of the skeletons hiding back there, what a terrible thing we would find, for certain. So anyways, the one thing that most people have been talking about is the the character of this woman, not the content of what the woman is saying. Now, I'm not going to say that I understand fully everything that came out of her mouth, but it was interesting to me that nobody actually criticized the content of the other doctors in the video. And that was very fascinating to me. Very fascinating to me. I watched one YouTuber who was an entertainment doctor. I guess that's what his name was. And I listened to everything that he said, and it was like, you haven't said anything, sir. You've just made ad hominem attacks. You said this is junk science, this is garbage, but why? And that is actually a curiosity, because you see, in academia, what should have happened was we should have been given the ability to logically assess and work out the why. And I've been criticized about this a lot in my life. Criticized and lauded in the same breath. One of the things that makes you interesting, John, is that you never just say something without following up with the phrase, and here's why. And that's a very interesting thing. I think I've always been careful of that because I am more than just a monkey who is getting entranced by a shiny bubble. I am more than just a cat who is entranced by a laser beam. I am more than just an animal who sees entertainment, goes, I don't know much about art, but I know what I like. Why do you like something? Why do you love something? Why do you despise or hate something? To be sure, there's a lot of things I don't particularly care for, and I'm willing to express why. And the why is the something that people have lost the ability, or maybe never had the ability to begin with, to express. Why does what is what going on right now seem like it's wrong? Can you logically assert to me, well, no, you're a conspiracy theorist? Well, maybe I am, and that might be the case. But just remember, it's only a theory if it's untrue. If it's only a theory if it can't be proven. But if you have enough evidence that is pointing towards something, does that mean that that evidence is just a theory and we can sit down and dismiss where that evidence came from? Of course not. We have to look at the evidence. What is the contention being saying? Any good court of law would take that evidence and examine it thoroughly. That's why we don't condemn people based on every accusation that comes out. That's why you have to look at the evidence. Tell me why. Why? That was the thing. Jesus gave us proof as to who he was and who he said he was. And is, I should say. It wasn't just a matter of, well, follow me. He culminated with evidence of his assertions. Gave evidence of his assertions. The greatest evidence being the fact that he died and rose again 3 days later. That is historical. That is historical evidence. It was testified to be true in history. Now, whether you accept that history or not, that's an entirely different question altogether. But just remember, we have to dismiss him because he came from Nazareth and he was arrested. Okay, well, there we go. We have to dismiss the validity of the claims because of character definition, and we do that all the time. And it's striking to me, and it's unfortunate, I think, that we have lost the ability to reason why. But instead, what has society devolved down to? I got that warm Professor Love. I am smart because I have a piece of paper and I can validate it. Look at this. The person on the screen told me so. The person on the screen told me so. Well, what about the other person on the screen? Oh, that's conspiracy theory. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. Why are you so quick to accept this person over here on this screen, but if this person on this screen over here says something against the person on that screen over there, why are you willing to accept one and not the other? Herd mentality? Psychology teaches us that people are more willing to go along in groups than in individuals. Safety in numbers, of course. Why? If everybody is wrong. If this was wrong, why does everybody believe it? Well, you get enough people panicked and scared enough, you're able to control them and do anything. This is Psychology 101, and if you weren't just sleeping through your psychology class, maybe you would have learned something. Maybe if you actually cared to understand the reason and the why. You see, knowledge takes time. Wisdom takes time. Reason takes time. And you have to be able to work it out. And that's why, even with the Lord, you still have to work out the Lord, work out your faith in fear and trembling. That doesn't mean we're to be terrified of the Lord, but to understand the awesome magnitude of what the Lord encompasses and who the Lord is. That in and of itself is worthy of fear and trembling. It is not the same thing as being terrified of the Lord, but standing in awe of the Lord's presence. But you still have to work it out a little bit. I have been given a gift. What do I do with this gift? I have been given the tools of academia. And if you're not willing to learn and use those tools, then what's the point in going anyways? Most people who have graduated from some kind of collegiate institution, generally speaking, don't go off to do anything with it. They have a very expensive piece of paper to their name, and they have not used the tools further with that piece of paper. To them, I graduated school, I graduated college, and I have just moved on with my life, and I never pick up a book. I go right back to young adult novels and comic books. I go back to entertaining myself to stupidity and oblivion, and I just click something, and I share something, and that's the end of that. That is the responsibility that I have to the world and to myself. I have a piece of paper, and that's it. And that, I think, is a travesty. That, I think, is a very large problem. Is it a problem with the student, or is it a problem with academia? What then do you do with that piece of paper once you have received it? What do you do with the tools that you have received? Do you sit down and just idly say, okay, I'm not going to read this because I don't have the emotional and mental energy? And that's a very good question, because if you don't have the mental and emotional energy to operate in the capacity of an intellect and a scholar, then why are you sharing information? It becomes nothing more than hearsay. You haven't even read what you've shared, so how do you know with what you're sharing is even true or valid? Do you not realize that there is a responsibility that comes with being the teacher? And anytime you share a thought, anytime you share information, anytime you give somebody something of knowledge or wisdom, you put yourself in the position of the teacher. And everybody wants to educate everybody, it seems like, but nobody wants to have the responsibility that comes with being the teacher. Nobody seems to want that responsibility, and that is a very large problem because there is a responsibility that comes with sharing information. There is a responsibility that comes with being a teacher. It is not good enough that you stand up and say, look at what this person is saying. You are putting yourself in a position of ambassadorship. Why is this person sharing? Is what they're sharing good, true, or valid? Are you willing to scrutinize the information? Are you willing to scrutinize and disseminate, dissect. Try to figure out which word I want to use there. Excuse me. Are you willing to take apart what they're willing to say and examine it for yourself? Or do you just say, that sounds reasonable, that sounds logical, that sounds good to me, and if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for me? Well, that might have worked if you were a fundamentalist, where you don't have to think and reason these things out. But in 21st century Western culture and civilization, we are so educated. We've traded one priest of the temple for the next priest of the temple. And now what we are just doing is blindly following what some expert says. And that is a problem, is a very large problem. Because that is the greatest appeal to authority. And then once I ask this question, what do you do and how do you contend when the authorities lie to you? What do you do when you observe something that does not add up? And what do we do with those people who are willing to say, I don't think this adds up? Are we going to condemn them? Are we going to call them slanderous names? No, that's not right at all. That's not good. This is not right or good to do. But yet we attack the character of the person because they disagree with us, because we have gotten to the point where the information that we are sharing, that which we love and that which we like, is so entrenched in our identity that we take it as a personal attack against our own being if somebody disagrees with us. Isn't that terrifying? I love synthesizers. I think they're the greatest instrument in the world. Okay, well, if the blues man comes up and looks at this and says, why do you need all that garbage? I just have my guitar and my amp. Why do you need all this to make music? I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Blues Man. I love the blues too. In fact, my musical roots are literally rooted in the blues. Muddy Waters, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Son House, Robert Johnson, Buddy Guy, Junior Wells. These are the guys I used to listen to back in the day. I mean, I loved the Blues Brothers. That was the greatest movie in the world. I loved the blues. But I moved on. I'm like, I like and respect it, but this is the form that I like to do. But should you get mad at me because suddenly what you are presenting, I want something different? And I think we do that quite a bit. You especially see that in the church. Well, why do you need to know this deep theological nonsense? All I need to know is the Bible. Well, because I want to know more. There's a reason why, for me, the fast food cheeseburger is not good enough compared to the nice quality cheeseburger that took time and effort and preparation, that uses better ingredients. There's a reason why I'd rather pay a little bit more money for the quality cheeseburger than the lesser money for the cheaper, faster cheeseburger. Because I want more. I need more. I desire more. And if all you do with what you have been given, with the tools that you have received, is you leave them out to rot and rust and decay and never to be used, then why do you have them in the first place? Does it just make you feel good about yourself? Does it give you some kind of superiority complex? As far as I'm concerned, I am interested in knowledge and wisdom. I am interested in discussing deep theological, philosophical, and spiritual matters, as well as matters of state and politics and law. I have been given the gift of reason and intellect. I have been given the gift of discernment. But if all we're doing with these tools are just callously throwing them away when they become inconvenient, if all we're doing with these tools are using them to just mindlessly juxtapose our ideology, then we are using these tools in a wasteful manner. In fact, we're not even using them at all. And that's what we are seeing today. Nobody is using their tools of reason and logic. They want to use one element of contention, and they want to build upon a worldview. Yes, I think it's terrible that people get sick and die. That is a result of the fall. That is a result in the flawed and frail nature of man, of life, of existence. And yes, it saddens me. But here's the thing. We have a 100% mortality rate. And while I will do my best to try to keep people safe, I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, going to allow myself to be turned into a bioweapon. If you are too sick to go out, then you should not be out. And there is no mask or amount of gloves that will prevent anybody else from getting sick. We have weaponized humanity by doing that. We have weaponized people by doing that. I'm not doing this to protect me. I'm doing this to protect you from me. Well, if you are such a danger to society, then you need to stay in. And there is no point in human history where we would ever tell anybody who is that sick to go out into the world. We stay away from the lepers. We stay away from those with Ebola. We stay away from those with the plague. We stay away from all of them. You stay away from me. I'm going to go out and live my life. I am healthy. I am fine. Oh, but there's a sickness. You don't know you're asymptomatic. Well, goodness gracious me. How many things are living in my body currently that are asymptomatic? I don't know these things. I do my best in life to generally keep care of myself, to be hygienically sound. But at no point would I ever look at somebody and saying, by your very own existence, you are a danger to me. That is beyond unethical. We quarantine the sick, not the healthy. We confine the healthy for crimes that they may or may not have committed, sometimes justly, sometimes unjustly. Social distancing is a nice way to say social isolation. It is not good for man to be alone. It is not good for man to be alone. Humans need communication. We need contact. We need to be able to look at a person across from us and to talk to them, and Zoom is not good enough. To isolate people in this manner is unethical. Completely unethical. You can't do that, because what happens is now all of a sudden you see an increase in depression, anxiety. Your mental health goes all the way down. Man is not designed to be isolated. There are a few people that can do it, sure. But generally speaking, it is not good for man to be alone. And the very things that we are doing right now, by turning every single person into a bioweapon, by turning every single person into a criminal, are we not presuming a person is guilty first, and that they need to prove their innocence? I do not need to prove my innocence to you. I am innocent. I am innocent before I am guilty. You have to prove my guilt. You have to prove my guilt, not assert it and assume it. That's not how we work here in America. I can't vouch for any other country. I cannot vouch for any other country. But it is astounding to me that this is where we have come, and this is what we have become. And it is still astounding to me, nonetheless, that this is yet another Sunday that has passed, this past one, where we still do not have churches, not because the government said we couldn't, but because those in power, those priests and ministers, they chose to, which still to me again shows that you really don't give a damn about the gospel, and that apparently it's not important for you to gather and congregate because you have no idea why you should be doing that anyways. But you know what? It's good to know that you can validate it and justify it with some kind of appeal to an authority. That's all I got for you, folks. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to listen. It's been a delight and a pleasure. And until next time, I bid you farewell and good